Well, to kick it off, Andrew, first of all, thank you so much for making some time for this today. Really appreciate getting this opportunity to hear your stories and advice. And thanks for watching some of the previous episodes. It's always nice to know that people are enjoying them. And it's a really supportive community, this group of kind of career development professionals. Everyone kind of seems to know everyone. And I've had this amazing opportunity now to speak to people across the world, but that somehow still know each other, or at least know someone who's been on the show. So really appreciate you jumping in to be part of this. And to ask kind of my first question I've been asking everyone, because it seems to be all our viewers' favorite part, is, what has your career journey been like? What kind of things have you done along the way to get to where you are today? Um, I initially thought this question would give people a roadmap of what they should do, but it seems to be more that it just opens their eyes to, what's possible. So would love to hear a little bit about your journey to get things started, Andrew.
Yeah, so I actually love talking about my journey because it is I've been in the field now for, I hate to admit it, but almost 25 years, just looking back. And um people always ask me, like, did you study to be a career development professional? Did you go to school for this? Where was that level of interest? And honestly, when I started this field, I didn't even know this field existed.
Yeah.
So literally we're going back 24, 25 years. I'm in England. I was originally working in the bar and restaurant scene. I'd worked at several gigs at a snooker hall in a couple of pubs,
Oh,
and
cool.
I was kind of getting sick of the shift work and things like that. And then I got let go from one of the jobs, and I'm like, okay, definitely it's time for some kind of change.
Right.
And so I started looking for another job. I was receiving benefits at the time, couldn't find anything. And at the time in the UK, there was a program called New Deal 18 to 24, which if you were within that age bracket after you've been out of work for 6 months and claiming benefits for 6 months, then you basically were told if you want to continue to receive benefits, you have to take part in this program. So I'm like, okay, here we go. I'll play ball. And um part of the program was that you had to attend an employment resource center to attend a 2 week boot camp. And then you had to visit this center like at least once a week for X number of weeks for your job search. You had to do some volunteer hours. And then supposedly at the end of 4 months or whatever it was, you were supposed to be successful in securing a work, or if you were not successful, you at least still were able to continue receiving benefits.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, here we go. I went along, and um, I was just me, and I like to help people. It's one of the reasons why I enjoyed working as a bartender, because I would just talk to people, and it's
Those
just
are the
the
best
old
kind of
cliche of,
bartenders.
yeah, the cliche of the bartender. Tell me your weary troubles. So as I'm doing the boot camp, and as I'm attending different meetings or visiting the center, I would just naturally talk to people about their job search and provide help where I could. And, as I'm doing my own thing,
Yeah.
I did do a volunteer placement with a youth center just down the road from me. And it was funny because at the time, because I was going to this employment resource center, they were like, well, you're already going there, so why don't you just, as part of your volunteer stuff, just help people with their resumes, or CVs as we call them in the UK? And I'm like, sure, whatever, I don't care. I'm just trying to apply and get jobs and kind of get the hours kind of going through.
Yeah.
So again, I wasn't really thinking of this as a career. I was just thinking this more of this is just a stop along the journey.
Right.
And so I'd been attending this employment resource center for 2 months. And the gentleman in charge of the center at the time, John White, beautiful guy, he comes up to me at one point, and he's like, Andrew, can I have a chat with you? Come into my office. And John was this lovely guy. He was about 5 foot nothing, but like full of life and
Yeah.
vitality and vim and vigor, as we used to say. And we sat down in his office, and he's like, Andrew, he's like, we see how you act with everybody around here. We see how friendly you are towards the staff. We see how much you're helping your fellow job seekers and things like that. We have a job here and we want you to apply for it because we think that you'd be really good at it. And I was like, oh, okay. Just completely taken aback because again, this wasn't something I was thinking of doing for a
Yeah.
job. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm happy to apply. And I'm like, great. He's like, well, send me a cover letter. We'll get you an interview, and we'll go from there. And I'm like, wonderful, great. I step out of the office, a little bit shell shocked because I wasn't expecting this. And then Karen, who was the office manager, she grabbed me by the arm and she's like, "Did John tell you about the job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know what to say." She's like, "Well, shut up, come over here, and I'm going to tell you all about the interview and what the questions are." Uh, and so, literally within the space of 48 hours, I ended up with a job
Oh,
in career development, and I'm like, "Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing." Which is not the first time imposter syndrome has crept in. But all of a sudden, here I am. I am 21, 22. I can't remember exactly how old I was at the time because I'm old now, so memory fades. But and I'm stuck on let me rephrase. I don't mean stuck. I mean I'm placed working in this program called New Deal 50 plus. So now I am this guy in his young 20s now supporting people over the age of 50 that are going through a similar program that I just went to. And so I had a wonderful one of my first clients was this wonderful guy who has basically been going through the system his whole life, so he knows all the ins and outs of it. And so he told me everything to watch out for when it came to different clients and things like that, which was a great education. Kind of backfired on him a year later when he became my client, and I'm like, well, I know all the things that you're going to try and do, so
right.
we need to work it a little bit harder. Uh, and so that was the start of my career. And so I spent a couple of years with John, and he really was we often use the term mentor a lot, and he really was my first mentor. Um, Going through those 2 years, one of the things that John used to do on the side was him and a friend used to rebuild canal boats.
Huh.
And so, literally every 3 or 4 months, me and John would take a day to drive a canal boat down the canals to deliver it because he had just finished working on it. And during those days, we would talk about everything in terms of career, life, love, happiness. A lot of words of wisdom from John during that time. I learned a lot about what not to say um to bosses and things like that because he was very he would be very straight with me at times and call me out when I was not being professional. And so learned an awful lot from him. And then, as is the nature of the work with contracts and stuff like that, a contract ended after a couple of years. Jumped into another contract with another organization not far from where that company was, where I spent about a year and a half. Really enjoyed working there, but I decided to get married and move to Canada. So, so
Nice.
that, that wasn't the full-time plan. But I met my wife, who is Canadian, and we decided that she is a lot closer to her family than I am with mine. Not that I don't love my family and stuff like that, but
For sure.
um, she's like close to her family. So we decided, and with the immigration, it was a lot easier for me to move to Canada. So we decided I'll come to Canada. And so coming to Canada, going through the whole immigration process, which is a lot in and of itself. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
But that was interesting because it was one of those things where um, there was no real how do I say this? In kind of going through the process, there was lots of hearsay and rumors around, oh, well, the process is going to take this long, or no, the process is going to take this long. And so we're looking at anywhere from 6 months to 4 years in terms of the whole process piece. So me and my wife, newly married, we're like, okay, here we go. When we start going through all the process, start filling out all the forms, For me, it actually turned out to be a year, and it was just one of those lovely things in life because I had applied to my work permit as well as my permanent residency. So my work permit came through after about a year when I'm like, great, here we go. We can start the process, start applying and stuff like that. And literally 2 days later, my permanent residency came through. So I'm
Wow,
like,
that's
great, that's $500 down the drain. But it was one of those things like you don't know, so you kind of have to go through the process to get it.
right.
It's just one of those like I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but that kind of happens a
Murphy's
lot.
Law kind of thing.
But it was so yeah, so that first year while home was interesting. And again, it was I'm in this new country, um I'm learning about what does career development look like in Canada. It's funny you mentioned about how everybody knows everybody, because that was very much the case in England as well. I remember going around to different places with John, and everyone knew him because he'd been in the field for so long, and everyone kind of bounced between different roles and stuff like that. And so when I started to connect with individuals in Canada, they were everyone was really kind. They were like, "Oh yeah, you should go speak to so and so over here, and you should go speak to so and so over here," which was really nice because then when I was chatting with people, it was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, no, we know this person, and we know this person," and it was funny because the first job I got in Canada, when I went for the interview, it was I had mentioned that yes, I'd spoken to this person at Niagara College, and yes, I'd spoken to this person at the BEC. And so when I was interviewing at the Employment Help Center, they were like, "Yeah, we know. We've actually spoke to them already."
Oh,
Because,
cool.
like I said, everyone knows each other, so they're
Yeah.
already having these conversations. So it's like, okay, so you know who I am. That's wonderful. And so for that first job in Canada, I literally was doing the same job I was doing when I first started this field, because I was working on a federally funded program called New Connections 40 Plus, or 40 Plus New Connections. Can't remember exactly what
Oh,
the
yeah.
name of it
Wow.
was.
Extremely
Um,
similar.
but yeah, it was literally the same thing. So I'm literally working with individuals mostly laid off from big firms that had spent their entire careers at that one company. And now what do they do? And so, yeah, dealing with a lot of the same challenges, a lot of the same issues. Either the jobs no longer exist or they no longer exist in Ontario. And so, where do you go? People dealing with essentially losing family because once you've worked at an industry for so long or worked at a company for so long, that company becomes your family and in a lot of ways becomes your identity as well. And so seeing a lot of people just lost in terms of not knowing who they are anymore was an interesting challenge. And one of the things that I tell people now about career development as I'm talking to people trying to get into the profession, oftentimes when you're working with students or working with clients, depending on which sector that you're in, a lot of the times when you're dealing with career development, you're not actually dealing with finding a job. That
Yeah.
will come eventually, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, depending on the individual. But oftentimes, there's a lot of other things that you're having to deal with and talk about. I know for some of the students that I'm working with, there's a lot of fear and anxiety, and so we have to work through what is the cause of that fear and anxiety, and how do we move past that to be more successful and engaging in your job search, working with these clients that have been employed somewhere for like 35 years and are no longer I'm Dave from John Deere. Who am I
Right.
now? Working through that process of, okay, what does that identity look like now so that you can move forward? Because John Deere doesn't exist anymore. And so you need to reinvent yourself. And then there could be other issues or other barriers that are causing different things. So there's a there's always this added layer to the career development space that I talk to people about because it's not something that we think of. Because when you think of career development, you're thinking of just, oh, yeah, it's just resumes and cover letters. It's just people getting a job. And it's like, no, it's a lot more than that. I often talk about the fact that we're in the business of changing people's lives because when you get someone a job, that changes a lot of things in their lives. Either they're now able to pay their bills, they're now able to save and go on holiday and go on vacation and hit off their bucket list,
Yeah.
or it means that they no longer have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, or that worry about their family's future anymore. Different little things like that. So yeah, so for literally just, and I'll be honest, I'm lucky. I kind of fell into this career and it kind of fit really nicely with my own personal skills. So I feel really lucky to be a part of this industry. But I feel even more lucky knowing that a lot of the people that are in this industry kind of feel the same way that I do, that this work actually really is important. It's not like one of those works, it's not one of those jobs where it's like you go, you show up, you do your job, and then you walk away and
No sense of accomplishment.
there's no sense of accomplishment, there's no sense of worry. It's just a job that you do just to make money.
Mhm.
This is a job that is impactful. It's also a job that can also be really stressful sometimes because because you're working with people and you care about the people, and so you take those problems on yourself sometimes. A colleague of mine often will always say sometimes we want the job more than the student does, because we're like, oh, come on, you could do this. But that's just part of the work that we do. So yeah, so I'm kind of happy the way I fell into this career. And now as I look at the industry right now, and now there are programs to be a career development professional and actually learn the industry and learn the tools that you need and stuff like that. So people now are saying, no, actually, I do want to do this field and I want to be trained in it. That's a completely different shift than from 25 years ago, which I'm really excited to see.
Thank you for sharing that, Andrew. It's an incredible journey, and I am so glad I asked this question because there are so many lessons to learn from what you've been through. And I think one thing that jumps out to me, and I have a ton of questions as well, but it's this concept of just going there and being yourself, like you said early on. You went there, you were who you were, you wanted to help people, and you just let that shine. And I think that's when opportunities like, John reaching out to say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? That's when those kind of things happen. And I'm glad there are people like that who notice good works being done by someone who, is excited and ambitious and looking to maybe actually, you know what, maybe not looking to do something, but has the potential to. And you need people like that, out there, encouraging the next generation. So I think there's a lesson to kind of take from John in that sense, for those listening to this episode. If you do see someone kind of early in their career, um, it's invaluable to them to play that role. So I'm really glad you had someone like that,
For
Andrew.
sure. And I think just even beyond that, one of the other good things that John did was, so when I was actually working for John and I was actually within my first couple of weeks and I was doing my first presentation, or first couple of presentations, and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. What's going on? John actually came up to me afterwards and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm facilitating, I'm doing the workshop. He's like, no, you're play acting. Like, be yourself. Don't try to be someone that you're not. And I realized that, I was trying to impress people. I was trying to, be more than what I was. And John was like, no, be yourself. You are who you are. We hired you for a reason. That's the person that we need to see at the front of the workshop. So don't try and be something more than what you are. So that's kind of connected to that. It's another one of those things that I liked about John was, again, he was very straight shooter. He was like, I'm not looking for you to be anyone other than who you are, because I see the value in who you are right now. So
Wow. Amazing to have someone like that as a figure in your life. But also just universally fantastic advice. That's a lesson I've learned along the way as well. I know the exact feeling of trying to give a presentation and trying to impress people. And the sooner, someone points it out to you or you recognize you don't have to do that. You can just be who you are and try to be helpful. It's a complete game changer.
it
Um,
really is.
Now, a kind of line of questioning I wanted to go down with you, just based on your experience of having worked with, mid-career professionals. This isn't a demographic I've had a chance to kind of dive deep on because I usually end up focusing on new grads and students and that type of thing. But absolutely, there's an entire group of people that transition, after 20 years, 30 years of a career into something else. My parents being people who have done that multiple times and who I take, tremendous reassurance from that, hey, at any point you can decide you want to do something totally different. So to ask an interesting question, having been someone who started that type of work, very young, and now someone with experience also working in that same area, what kind of advice would you give to the younger version of you who had to do that work? Um, because I imagine there's an entire new generation of people who are entering the field in the 40 or 50 plus program that you mentioned, and I'm kind of curious how you would guide them to work the way you did.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say the first thing I'd say to myself if I could go back 20 years ago is feel out. Because I felt a lot of stress when I first started coaching these people that were like twice my age.
Right.
So that was interesting at the time. I think a big part of it is recognizing even for myself, and again, this was something I was still learning at that moment in time, is that our definition of careers is changing for starters. And so we were shifting out of a demographic at that point, and we are still in some ways right now, where the traditional career was you would spend your life at one organization, and that was the career path for a lot of individuals in the UK. It's true for a lot of people here in Canada and around the world, but we've seen this shift over the past quarter of a century, where that is no longer viable, either because of different economic factors, different shifts within the way that we work. The technology that has come along has really made an impact in terms of the availability and mobility for people to engage in and work in. Some of the clients that I were first working with were glass blowers and worked in glass factories, making bottles, making ornamental glass vases and different things like that. And so you have someone that's been working in the glass industry for 40, 50 years, and you're like, okay, well, I still want to be a glass blower. Where do I go? And you're like, well, you're not going in the UK anymore. You need to think about Japan, and you need to think about America, and you need to think about Saudi Arabia, where there's a demand for those particular industries. And when I was talking to those individuals at the time, they were like, is that even possible? Can I even do that? Because this is my home and stuff like that. And it's like, no, they're actually paying, at the time, they were paying premium for individuals to come from the UK because they saw the value in their skills and stuff like that. So it's recognizing that career is no longer this one defined element anymore. That it is something that defines everything about who you are. People look at me and they say, well, you're a career development professional. Yes, I am. I'm also a father. I'm also a mental health advocate. I'm also a board worker. I'm also a nerd, as evidenced by some of the stuff behind me. Everyone now has so many different identities, and that now is normal. Whereas 30 years ago, it was you were Dave from John Deere, and that was your whole identity. And so helping people to recognize that work is no longer their identity is a huge part of it. And that would probably be the biggest advice I would give myself, because people are so much more. I love and hate the cliche of that your career should be something that you enjoy doing because you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's not 100% true, because, if I could do anything that I wanted at all in my entire life, I wouldn't be getting paid for it. And so in which case I'd be broke and destitute, because
Yeah,
I just want to play
sure.
video games. And I'm not a good enough person to do it on YouTube or professionally or anything like that. So I'm going to go
Those
broke.
those guys set the bar and girls set the bar very high.
Exactly. So I know that for myself, yes, I love doing what I do as part of this role, but there are also other elements of my job that I do outside of this work that I love doing. And so recognizing that my whole identity is not wrapped up in my work is really important. And it's one of the things that I like to share with a lot of the students that I'm working with as well. I work with, you mentioned about grads and new grads, and I work with a lot of MBA students that have actually going through a career change. So they've worked for 5 or 10 years, and now they're looking at making some kind of career change, but they freak out because they're like, I don't know what else to do. I don't have any experience in this new field. And I'm like, that's okay, because you have the skills, you have the passions in all these different areas. And that's the piece that you need to sell to the employers, not your old work experience. I feel like a lot of us get so caught up in the role of what we've done that we can't move beyond that. And it's not true. I love talking to students that say they have no experience, because I will literally go through a list of, okay, tell me about every course that you've done. And I will pull out 50 skills from just the courses alone. And then we'll talk about the sports that they play, or the teams that they're on, or the volunteer work that they've done, or just the part-time job that they're doing in the gas station down the road. And
Right.
I'm like, you have so much more experience than you think. But because, again, it kind of comes back to that identity and work piece being correlated, because they feel like work and identity are so closely related that anything outside of that doesn't exist.
It's such a helpful reminder, Andrew. And I think, people are going to take a lot of confidence coming out of, just listening to this, because it's so true. It's not singular in that sense that your job is who you are. There are so many other facets of life that build up, what you can offer and what you can do. And I just find it reassuring to hear, your opinion that, even someone with an MBA, 10, 15 years, a lot of time, a lot of money spent on that, that it's okay to want to do something different.
Yeah.
And that all these surrounding skills, including whatever you've done with that MBA, can help you in whatever you choose next. But also this other opinion, that, with the glass blowers, hey, if you want to keep doing that, maybe you can, but the thing that changes is your geography. Um, I guess it's what you're saying, even that isn't one directional. You don't have to change industries, but you can.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay in the same place. You can travel if you want to, and find a new place that's interested in those skills. It just really opens the door, wide to the possibilities you have in front of you, which is again just a really reassuring reminder. And to speak to a point you mentioned earlier, the work that career development professionals do is incredibly um, profound. And I'm glad you mentioned that as well. Just a shout out to career development professionals in the community watching this. It is life changing work. Like you said,
Yeah.
it is what makes the difference in so many aspects of life. And helping people build confidence and
Yeah.
recognize that is so important. But like you also mentioned, it's difficult when, there's more being discussed than just a job, a resume, and an interview. And the last kind of question I'll ask you, just because I know I didn't ask you for this much time, but if you have time for one more question, it's just around, do you have any tips for career development professionals who are, they're in it 100%. They themselves, want the job sometimes for the candidate more than they can for themselves, but take on a lot, um, and are having to help clients that aren't just there with one singular job issue. How do career development professionals um, make sure they have the resources to go the distance and continue doing this kind of work?
So there's there's probably a couple of things, and I could probably just talk for like an hour and a half. In fact, I have talked for about an hour and a half on this just in of itself, just based on previous stuff that I've done in the past. But I think the piece around there's two elements. Number one is the piece around self-care. It is hugely important. And I am probably not the best person to talk about this at times, because I regularly check my emails on far too regular a basis. But being able to distance yourself in some ways
Right.
is really important. Like I said, I'm always on my phone, so I'm probably not the best example of this. But
I know.
I know that when I'm at home and stuff like that, and when I'm with my kids and stuff like that, they're the ones that have my priority. They're the ones that have my focus, because it can be very, very easy to get caught up in um thinking about what's going on and thinking about the hassles and thinking about the challenges and so on and so forth, that come with the work that we do, particularly when we deal with with a particular client that is going through multiple issues and has multiple things going on in their lives and multiple barriers that they're handling and dealing with, because we want to help them in all aspects of their lives and we can't. And that's a hard part. That's a hard lesson to learn as well. And it's taken me a time to learn it, is that there will be some people that we want to help, but they don't want the help. Or we can't help every element. We can only do a little bit. So that self-care piece is really important. And there's like a thousand different ways that you can involve in self-care. Like for me, it literally is spending time with my kids. It literally is me sometimes just shutting off and playing video games, just to unwind and stuff like that. It's taking the time to go away with my wife and deleting my Teams app so I'm not reading Teams messages and things like that, and then trying to figure out how to reinstall it when I come back, and that's a whole mess. So that would be the first piece, the self-care piece. The second piece that I would say is have someone that you can talk to. I know in many of the conversations that you've had with career development professionals, the idea of having a mentor is really important. And so I will heartily recommend that. But even if you don't have a mentor or someone that you officially identify with as a mentor, because I think true mentors are really hard to come across at times. And that's a whole separate conversation in and of itself. But having one or two people that you can talk with, or that can give you a quick smack around the back of the head to shake you up at things. Like, I am very thankful for my wife, because she will keep me on track. Like, if I'm getting distracted or if I start checking my phone too much, she will literally call attention to it and be like, "What are you doing? Pay attention, get back, get focused." Or if she knows that I'm having like a bad day, she'll be like, "You need to talk about it. You need to tell me what's going on, because it's impacting how you're reacting with other people." But also having, if you have that one person, whether it's a boss or a friend that you're working with, that can understand the conversations that you're having, can understand the clients that you're having, that is really, really beneficial. And again, it doesn't really need to be a mentor. It just needs to be someone that you can chat with, so you can offload and vent to occasionally. Sometimes I think people kind of get the bad rap when it comes to venting at work, because it kind of ties into like gossip, or it ties into like negativity and stuff like that. But sometimes we actually do need to shed some of that emotional load. And sometimes the way we do that is by venting, just so we can kind of clear it out of our heads and stuff like that. And if you have that trusted person, whether it's a coworker or a boss, that's actually beneficial and can actually be a good process as part of your team dynamic is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives other people the chance to kind of do the same and,
Yeah.
together do some problem solving. So really helpful, tangible, strategies we can put in place, Andrew, and a great reminder that, it's just little conversations like that
Yeah.
that can make a huge difference along the way. And yeah, again, thank you so much for these insights today. I'm going to let you go in a second here, but I hope you'll join me again for a future episode, because I
Oh,
have questions
happy
about
to.
the video games you play, the miniatures, and snooker. So,
Yeah, totally
um,
happy to have another conversation and talk for another hour and a half about everything in life.
yeah, perfect. You will definitely be getting an email from me about that. But thank you again for the time today, Andrew. Truly appreciate it. And if folks want to get in touch with you to ask questions and that kind of thing, is there a way to reach out to you?
Oh, there's multitude ways. Probably the easiest way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com/Andrew Bassingthwaighte is my profile, I think, if memory serves correctly. Or you can go on the Brock University website under CCEE, contact us. You'll see my email address there. But LinkedIn is usually the easiest way to get in touch.
Okay, we'll definitely link to that for folks to reach out if they have questions and are looking for advice. And looking forward to having you back on here, Andrew. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and hope you have
Thank
a
you.
great
And
rest of your
thank
day
you.
over there.
Yeah, thank you to you as well. Thank you for providing this space to so people can learn more about the work that we do and to get to meet some of the amazing people in our field. So thank you
Oh,
for you as well.
it's my pleasure. Happy to do it, and honored to get the chance to have these conversations.
Awesome. Thanks, Imran.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.